Welcome everybody. We've got Herp of the Week, and this week I'm pleased to introduce Dr. Georgia Ward-Fear. We don't actually know which Herp of the Week we're going to be talking about. It's all a surprise. So over to you, Georgia.
Thanks, Martin. Did you know that one of the oldest and continuous religious beliefs for humankind, which still exists today, is about a snake? The rainbow serpent exists across Australia, from the desert to the coast to the tropics. These are just some of the many names that Indigenous cultures from across the continent have for the rainbow serpent. The rainbow serpent is protector, creator, and lawmaker. In the dreaming, the world was flat, barren, and arctic, and the rainbow serpent slumbered beneath the ground. When the time was right, she rose up and shouted to the animals to awake, and then she began her journey to create the landscape. She created the mountains and the valleys and the hills as she sinewed across the landscape, and she flooded it with water, creating the rivers, the streams, and the billabongs. When she had finished her journey, she rested in a deep permanent waterhole where she still resides today. The rainbow serpent is both benevolent protector and also malevolent punisher for those that don't do the right thing. She's associated with fertility, with abundance, with rainfall, with protection, and also for punishment. And it's said that rainbows across the sky are the serpent moving between waterholes to replenish them all across the continent. And scientists have found the first paintings of the rainbow serpent about 8,000 years ago, after the last ice age, when sea levels began to rise. But who was the original rainbow serpent? Was she some prehistoric snake that no longer exists, an elapid, a large python, or species that are associated solely with water, like the file snake or the water python? Well, the answer is that she's all of those, and it depends on where you live in Australia. So in honour of the rainbow serpent, I am choosing for Herp of the Week the olive python, which has existed at every field site that I've had a profound connection to. The olive python is one of 15 python species in Australia, and they sit in the genus Liasis. These are really large-bodied and slow-moving pythons. There's 3 extant species and 1 extinct species, which was the largest snake in Australia. Its name is Liasis dubedinala, and that is an Indigenous word that translates to squeezing ghost, and that was about 9 metres long. So as I said, they're large, slow-moving, bulky, and they're found across Indonesia, New Guinea, and Australia. The olive python is endemic to Australia, and it's split into 2 subspecies, and I'll show you the distribution in a minute. They grow up to 5 metres long and between 10 and 20 kilograms. So they're a very large snake. They're actually the 2nd largest snake in Australia. And really, despite their size and strength, they're gentle giants. They're very placid animals, and they're beautiful to watch in the wild. And they're actually, because of their nature, they're actually kept a lot in the pet industry by experienced keepers. They have a wide distribution across northern Australia, from Queensland to the Kimberley, and this segregated little part of the distribution is where one of the subspecies resides, Liasis olivaceus baroni, the Pilbara olive python. Males have a much larger home range than females, and they'll travel great distances, up to 4 kilometres, to find mates. There's not actually a lot of research been done on olive pythons past their basic life history, but one study found that they had home ranges of between 87 and 446 hectares. So a large snake, large home range. As I said, they've got a wide distribution, right from arid places in Queensland, all through the monsoonal tropics of the Northern Territory, and across to the rocky kind of topography of the Kimberley, and also the Pilbara. This is a picture on the top left of the Hamersley Ranges, where the Pilbara olive python resides. They live in savanna woodlands and mountain ranges, but really they're kind of rock specialists. They're associated with rocky outcrops and gorges, mountain ranges, and they particularly hone in on water. So around rivers, rocky gorges with rivers, and also water holes, permanent water holes. And they have been called the olive rock python before. And there's nothing more exhilarating than actually spotlighting around some of these places and finding these kind of gigantic snakes, gentle snakes cruising around. So, you know, being a snake, they've got a forked tongue, and that's a really important part of their sensory system. The forked tongue is used to detect vomero detection, where it tastes chemicals, basically puts it into the Jacobson organ, which sits in the top of the mouth, to sense the chemicals of prey and predators and whatever else around them. And they also have, being pythons and also in the genus Liasis, they have heat sensing pits, which you can see in the right-hand picture on the bottom jaw there and on the snout. And those heat sensing pits are like infrared detection cameras, if you like, that they use to detect prey. And olive pythons are thought to actually hunt, like position themselves in the landscape where there's a good where there'll be a good differential between the background and prey that moves through, kind of like a wildlife detection camera. They are quite generalist. They'll eat mammals, birds, reptiles, including themselves, other pythons and other olive pythons. They are ambush predators, and being a python, they're a constrictor. They hunt around water and even underneath water. They'll actually live. They'll actually, get into the water underneath the water surface, and they'll ambush prey that's coming to the edge. It's like quite a scary thought to think when you think about swimming around in some of those water holes. They hunt nocturnally, but you can see them in the day sometimes. And because they're such a large snake, you often get these really amazing and impressive displays of prey, of predation events. On the left here, you can see this snake, this olive python, is perfectly kind of camouflaged in that rock crevice there, and has taken down a rock wallaby, which has either fallen down and it's going to have to pull it up or crawl down. But then on the right here, there's an olive python consuming a freshwater crocodile. So it's pretty primordial stuff when you see them taking down big prey. It's kind of battle of these giant reptiles. It's really exciting. As you can see, they're this beautiful olive colour, a tan colour, but they can go from a light olivey green through to a pretty deep red in some of the pilbara populations, and a cream belly underneath. So they're a really beautiful snake. We don't know too much about their reproductive ecology, or the mating systems, the mate selection. We do know that they mate at the cooler times of the year, and they use chemoreception to detect and follow their mates. And also they congregate in mating season around the base of cliffs, or on cliffs, and also around caves. And once the pythons come together to mate, a pair will go and hang out in a cave for 3 to 4 weeks, and they'll copulate multiple times, and then they will separate, and the female will go off and lay her eggs. And they only breed about every 2 to 3 years. So they're a slow kind of reproductive turnover for this species, and that kind of can contribute to some of the threats they face, their vulnerability to threats in parts of their region. Once the mating has finished, the females will disperse, not necessarily close to water, maybe far away from water, and they will lay their clutch of eggs in the late dry season to hatch in the middle of the wet season, which is what a lot of tropical reptiles do. Their hatchlings are coming out at the peak resource period across the year. And so females will lay eggs under rock slabs and in crevices, and being pythons, a lot of pythons will actually incubate their eggs by coiling around them and shivering to maintain a constant temperature. And olive pythons are no different. They have 12 to 40 eggs, quite large clutches, but the average is around 19, 20. And the female will incubate those eggs for 2 months, and then the hatchlings will emerge at 35 centimetres of length. And I've been really lucky to to catch quite a few small olive pythons, and they're really beautiful little snakes. But not much is known about the survival of the offspring and recruitment into the wider population. And you see, you know, when females have finished this incubation period and they're out searching for food, they're ratty, they're very thin, in very poor condition, might be tick infested, and they're just kind of eating whatever they can find. The species does face threats, particularly in the Pilbara region. The Pilbara subspecies is actually listed as vulnerable, due mostly to habitat reduction from mining, pastoralism and wildfires, which can be said across the whole range, although obviously the more northern part of the range is larger and there's healthy populations everywhere through that range. But these habitat modifications, as well as feral animals like cats and cane toads, actually can influence the animals themselves, but more so influence the prey of these animals. So things like quolls and those critical sized mammals that they need, rock wallabies, and in particular, what I've seen through my research with goannas is that that the pythons actually rely heavily on goannas for food at certain times of year, and as the cane toads come through and wiping out those populations, that is a kind of an impact that those local populations will feel. But also through vehicle strike, because they're such a big, slow, heavy python, then they don't move off the road quickly. Even if they feel the vibration, they're more likely just to freeze and sit there. So there's a lot of vehicle strike of olive pythons, as well as misidentification. Sometimes they get mistaken for king browns, another large brown snake, which is not really, I mean, large king browns can get pretty big, but you wouldn't, if you knew your snakes, you wouldn't mistake them by the way they look, but a lot of people do and kill them. So my personal relationship with olives is I've never actually worked with them directly, but as they've always been present wherever I've worked, and in many ways they've kind of interfered with the research that I've tried to do. So in my career in Northern Australia as an ecologist for conservation organisations and also my own PhD, I've had, you know, numerous animals pulled out of traps, or even just scared to death in the trap from a python that's been circled around the trap for the whole night, quolls and things like that. Olives actually ate but nearly 20% of my goannas that I was using as my study animal for my PhD. And I've also shared lots of field camps with them. I remember one when Rick was actually out at my field site. One time we came back from being out, and it was kind of an abandoned house that we took over, and had power going through it and everything. And our field assistant, you know, the doors were didn't really close that well, and we were basically camping within the house. But our field assistant went ahead and into the lounge room and said, "I've just seen a large brown snake drop behind the couch." And yeah, that was really scary there for a few minutes, but we were able to determine pretty quickly that it was an olive python and get it out. But despite you know, all of this interference that they've had with my research, there's nothing, as I said before, nothing more exhilarating than seeing them when you're out spotlighting. They're very graceful and gentle creatures, and it's always exciting when you see one in Northern Australia. And so that's my rainbow serpent, and that's why I've chosen the olive python for Herp of the Week. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Georgia. That was great. Have we got any questions for Georgia?
Georgia, where did you get the info on home range sizes and so on? Is that Dave Pearson's unpublished stuff? Or?
No, it was a paper by Tussick from 2004. But yeah, there's really not that much information on them. But they do have, I forgot to say, they do have distinct home ranges, what's known about them. Yeah.
Did Dave Pearson do radio telemetry on them?
Yeah, he did.
Yeah.
He did it on the Pilbara olive. And he's actually got he does have a paper out on them, and he does have, he's the one who's provided a lot of the information. But yeah, another really cool thing that, the way that they've eaten my animals is that I was able to kind of inadvertently radio track them through my PhD, because they lived in the rocky outcrops around the floodplain, and then they would come down and hunt along the river for the goannas, nail the goannas and sit down there for a few days and then go back up into the rocky outcrops, and they would move big distances.
I mean, that's a pretty amazing statistic that they've eaten 20% of your study.
Yeah. They had, actually, I mean, it was originally, I thought when Rick and I designed the study, we thought, okay, 40 animals, 20 controlled, 20 treatment. And I caught 40 within the first couple of weeks, and it was really exciting. I was like, right, sweet, things are going well. And then by the end of the wet season, all of those original animals were dead. And I'm having from huge python mortality, and I was having to constantly catch, and it's...
You mean huge goanna mortality?
Yeah, sorry, goanna mortality from pythons though.
Right, yeah.
Pythons were nailing them, yeah. Like, I think by the end of the study, just as many animals had been killed by pythons as had been killed by toads.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Mm.
They don't eat toads, I'm guessing. Smaller.
No, the jury's out a little bit on pythons. There's not really much evidence. You get the occasional anecdote that you find a python with a toad in its mouth, but yeah, for the most part, I've seen water pythons with toads in their mouth, and then come back and there's no dead animal there.
Yeah.
So, but I don't know.
So why? I've got a question that I'm putting out to everybody, maybe Rick in particular. Why is it that the large Australian or semi-large Australian pythons, even things like diamond pythons, which are pretty big, are so placid and gentle? And then you think about Burmese pythons, African rock pythons, reticulated pythons that are just ridiculously aggressive. Would you say do you think it has to do with the sort of mammalian predators that are pretty much absent in Australia compared to Africa and Asia?
I would have said it's very variable. A lot of the coastal carpets in Queensland are psychopathic.
Okay.
Grubbies.
Very unpleasant. Yeah, I don't know. That's a plausible idea that there's fewer predators. I mean, there's really not that many big predators in the Australian systems that would threaten a large python. Although, we had foxes and dogs killing really big carpet pythons in Mark Fitzgerald stuff at Mullumbimby. Mm-hmm. But, dogs have only been present relatively recently in the form of dingoes.
Yeah.
Jungle carpet pythons are also notoriously cranky.
Are they?
Which ones?
The jungle carpet python.
Yeah.
And they're smallish.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, what are the ones that you're talking about, Martin? Are they also ambush predators, or are they kind of hunters?
Yeah, they're ambush predators.
Okay.
So, but it is interesting though with the African rock pythons. They will just freeze, and you can walk right up to them and sit next to them. But as soon as you touch them, then they just go ballistic.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty. I mean, I don't really want to condone, going around and wrangling and catching any kind of wild snake that you see, but yeah, they are a beautiful animal to engage with in the wild.
Yeah, I remember when we were staying in Kununurra, there was a really big one just in this this person's sort of carport, and yeah, it was just really. I mean, we didn't really touch it or anything, but it was very relaxed. Yeah,
they can. Yeah, I mean, it's great. You can follow them too. They'll let you get really close to them and follow them around for as long as you want, really.
Yeah.
When you touch them, though, it's a different story.
Oh, I haven't found that.
It depends. I think I've found that the really small ones and really big ones are relatively chilled. But between about 1 metre and 2.5 metres.
The angsty teenagers.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that goes without saying, doesn't it? I remember going to, I was an ecologist for Australian Wildlife Conservancy, and we have these big, they're donor events basically, because AWC relies on philanthropic donations, private donations. And so, you know, they're really exciting and they're fun because you get flown to these really remote places, and then you turn up to this really remote gorge in the Kimberley and they've laid out these tables and there's safari tents everywhere and blah, blah, blah. You meet lots of really interesting people. But as an ecologist, the pressure's on. You know, the CEO will be there as well, and he'll say, "Oh, Georgia, here's Damien. He's never seen a Kimberley olive python." And it's like, okay, oh, George is our herpetologist. And so I've had to, I remember one particular time that I had to find from scratch an olive python. And I was just searching high and low, and I found this big beautiful python, and we're able to hang out with it for a while. And yeah, then the dude probably donated like 50 grand or something the next day. Like, that's how it works, kind of thing. But yeah, they are a beautiful snake, and people do really want to see them, spend time with them. It's something special that being that close to such a big snake.
I didn't know they ate freshies. Yeah. It really fits in too with the whole, you know, the rainbow serpent mythology. It's everywhere has mythology about rainbow serpents living in the water, you know, because obviously water is life everywhere in Australia. Whether it's in the desert and you're waiting for it, you know, and it's so precious, or it's in the monsoon where you're actually scared of too much water some of the year. And that's where that duality comes in, of it being, you know, serpents being protectors, as well as people that, you know, as well as creatures that can actually wreak havoc on the landscape if you don't do the right thing. Yeah. Did you
olives will also really commonly be found in rock pools in the rocky areas.
Yeah.
So they'll set up with just their nose like right on the edge.
Yeah.
So anything that's coming down to drink at those rock pools just gets nailed.
Yeah. Yeah. I've had on occasion, like with the goannas, because I did a radio telemetry project, and so sometimes on numerous occasions actually, I would track a goanna, and then say I was doing training, so I would track a goanna and I'd try and train it, and then if it would move to another spot, then I'd try for multiple times in that session and then give it up for that day and come back, track it again a few days later. But numerous times I would have done that, try to train it, it hasn't worked, and the goanna's moved off, and then I've come back the second time and it's in the throes with either a black-headed python or an olive python. It was just hanging there, that I've, you know, inadvertently caused its like death with this huge scary python.
Yeah, I mean, it might be cool with your goannas to look at their ability to detect olive python prey chemicals, pheromones or whatever. They might be, I mean, they do so much tongue flicking.
Yeah.
You would expect that they could discriminate something like an olive python as an obvious threat, and then it might be cool to see if they can discriminate olive pythons from, say, snakes that wouldn't normally eat them.
Yeah, that's that would be a really cool study. I tried to do some work with prey scent when I was out there, where some animals would close their burrows completely, some goannas, and others wouldn't. And I was tried to look at whether I could elicit that anti-predator behaviour. But I think actually what it was more like an innate, it was an innate behaviour within individuals, and it wasn't actually related to the environmental, you know, chemicals. But I caught a couple of pythons and had them collected scent from them in containers, and then I would go out, track the goannas, and then I'd put little patches of paper, you know, damp paper of like snake wee, snake juice on their burrow, and see if this consecutive night that if they would close burrows and stuff. But not much came of it.
I would imagine that olive python would be goanna's prey at some stage. I mean, if they're juveniles, goanna can eat them easily. So there's more than predator-prey system. I mean, not necessary that olive python is the predator.
Yeah, you're right. You know, you're definitely right. That they can. And we've done a dietary study and found lots of python scales in there, in there as well. So yeah, you're right. They definitely could. But yeah, no, it was a really cool system. It was a really interesting But goannas actually, on the floodplain, they actually use a different burrow every night. They dig a different burrow every night, and they very rarely reuse the same burrow. So I think that's also a ploy that they have to get around. And I think Lachlan, when was it when you were at Ormby that you took photos of a black-headed python investigating goanna burrow?
I had a video from out on Roebuck Plains
Right.
of a black-headed python setting up to ambush a goanna that was in a burrow overnight.
Yeah.
Yeah, wow. And now we're all stuck indoors.
Yeah, I know.
Disappointing. Oh, thanks very much, Georgia. That was amazing. I learned a lot.
It's a humble creature that we all probably all know about, but it's beautiful.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.